Gracious greetings, saints and family and guests. Welcome to another edition of Living Water for a Thirsty Thursday. Now, we've been talking about leadership here for the last couple of weeks, and we want to continue on this journey. And we said we're going to talk about it from the perspective of humility. And here we are back at the church in the sanctuary, because I was thinking, as people drive by the outside and they see the building, do you know when they see the building, when they see the church house, that they see it as a community leader? Yeah, and then you can even go one step further, that when they see the building and seeing it as a community leader or pillar, that they're not talking about 1720 Walnut, they're not talking about St. Stephen Missionary Baptist Church, the building. They're speaking about the occupants. They're speaking about the people that come here from West Covina, from Victorville, people that zoom in from all over the nation and the world, making up that church. And we already asked and answered the question, is everyone a leader and is everyone a follower? And of course, we said, yes, we all have leadership responsibilities and we all have followership responsibilities. And so we want to continue on this journey, since we have that responsibility of being community leaders, to do it with humility. And I want to read from a familiar passage in Ephesians chapter 4. We're just going to look at the first couple verses. And it says, I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called. And at the beginning of verse 2, it says, with all lowliness and meekness. And so prayerfully, you're hearing what's being said here with Paul as he speaks to the church at Ephesus. He says, I, therefore, the prisoner, a POW, right? Someone that is bonded in chains, locked up, for who? For the Lord, for Jehovah, for Adonai, for Elohim, for God himself, for the Lord. And then he says, I beseech, I beg, I urge, I'm pushing you that you walk worthy. And we know walk in Greek means to live. And then he says, live worthy, live with honor of the vocation. Vocation could be occupation, but it could also be the roles that we have as spouses and as parents and as employers and employees, all the different roles we have, community neighbors and things of that nature, vocation wherewith we are called or set apart by God. But then he says, this is how I want you to do it. And it's the first thing he says, with all lowliness and meekness. When you put those two words together, you're literally just talking about humility. And if you've been around St. Stephen a couple of days, you know every month we kind of speak from the perspective of a theme every month. And you remember maybe a year or two ago, we had a theme, humility. And we simply said biblical humility in our working definition is allowing our ability to be tamed by our spirituality. So if you're hearing what's said, biblical humility is allowing our ability to be tamed by our spirituality. Spirituality. And so all those alities, that's what you're picking up. But it's so important to know that even though I have capacity, even though I have power, even though I have authority, even though I'm the one in charge, even though I'm the one responsible, it doesn't mean that I have to leverage or push or flex said capacity, authority, or power. It may be spiritual discernment needs to come in, that I have some long suffering, that I need some patience, right? That I need to do what I can to have some tolerance, that I need to give some grace, that I need to be a little more compassionate in that moment. And so tempering my ability with my spirituality, so important for us to do. Well, I was just doing some reading and came across this magazine that we get here at St. Stephen, and it's called D.Min magazine, and it's printed by our Southern Baptist Convention, who we are affiliated with, our Southern Baptist Convention, and it's called D.Min magazine. It is put out by our Black Church Studies Division in Lifeway, and they put material out for our ethnic communities. And I was reading one of the articles, and the title of the article is Humility is the Secret Sauce of Every Long-Term Leader. Like, wow, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is exactly where we are. But the secret sauce is humility for long-term leaders. And I just want to pick out the 5 things that they brought out and share those with you. And then next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about leadership, but problemed leadership, when you're trying to lead, but people don't really want to follow. But here's the things that they wrote down for humility or humble leaders. Number one, they said a humble leader is teachable, right? So I was told when I was coming up, the biggest room in every house should be the room for improvement, right? We should always be willing to get better. And what they wrote here in the magazine, every challenge, trial, and circumstance provides an opportunity for growth, right? And so everything we go through gives us an opportunity to be taught and to learn. Great point. Number two, a humble leader quickly realizes and admits mistakes. Yeah, we all kind of go the wrong way. We think we had the right path, but as we go down and embark on that journey, we quickly realize, or sometimes a little bit later, realize it isn't the correct path. And a true humble leader is one that can admit their mistakes. And parents, it's important that you admit that to your children. Spouses, it's important that you admit that to one another. With your neighbors that live next door to you, it's important to admit when we make our mistakes. It really does make a tremendous difference. And what they wrote is the only way a team grows through failure is when amends are offered and mistakes are owned. So yeah, we got to admit what goes on, and that is how we can improve from our missteps, right? Number three, a humble leader celebrates other leaders and is quick to give credit. Yeah, another thing when I was coming up, I heard, and I'm sure you heard, it's far better to be a king and queen maker than it is to be the king or the queen. And so what they say here, they give a quote that President Truman and Coach Wooden gave, and I'm sure you've heard it before. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit, right? Of course, we have heard that before, and we know it is the case. And so building up others and giving others encouragement and passing it on to the team rather than yourself as the leader or individual. Number four, a humble leader admits his or her limitations. So important to know where our abilities cease, where our giftedness ceases. And so many people are good at so many things. But then at the same time, those same people also have some areas of exposure and some areas that aren't as strong as other areas. And knowing that is critically important, not being insecure about it, not feeling some kind of way about it, but really making sure that you bring people around you that can make up that difference. Otherwise, pride is creeping in. And this is what they said. Have you ever considered that a heavy workload and a life with no margin could be a hidden symptom of pride? Yeah, sometimes we get in this place where if I don't do it, it won't get done. If I don't do it, it won't get done right. If I don't do it, I won't even get the credit. All things very prideful, right? So humility is what allows us to fight that off. Know our limitations, that I can't be everywhere. I can't do everything. I don't have all power. The fifth one, a humble leader realizes he is only a vessel, not the main character. Yeah, all of us kind of conceptually try to think that I'm not the main character, but most of us live like we are, right? Whatever role we're in, it still kind of comes back to me, myself, and I. Selfish instead of selfless. And what they wrote is says, we are all part of a much bigger story than any of us can comprehend. I might not have a starring role, but I have a few lines to say. I commit to saying those few lines as best I can. Yeah, and that's really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If we can really allow ourselves to be seen as God's humble servants, going back to that passage in Ephesians 4:1-2, that I am a prisoner, I'm a slave of God, and I want to serve him with lowliness and meekness, but I want to do it with effectiveness. Well, prayerfully, this has served you well and just kind of picking up a few more tools to be a tremendous servant leader. Like we said, next week we'll talk about when it just seems like the people aren't following your leadership. Continue to make God proud in all you say, think, and do.